It is Football at 4, and it's powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher is in the house for a Mosher Monday version of Football at 4. It is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. All right, so we got the dates for the OTAs, the mini camps, the mandatories, and all that good stuff. So we got a little bit of Eagles we want to dive into today. Also want to get Mosher's thoughts on a couple of National Football League stuff. So we'll get into a couple things here. What's going on, Moshe?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm always good, and a Monday is here, which means you and I get to kind of cut it up a little bit. So what I want to get from you is kind of a couple thoughts on some depth chart things, some roles moving forward as these OTAs. Now, what do you think is going to happen? You got the OTAs, the rookie mini camps, the voluntary stuff, and then the mandatory stuff. How do you think that this is all going to play out like normal? The dates will be fine, and we'll see everybody out there?
No, I mean, I think the Eagles have already released their statement about veterans not attending the voluntary mini camps. And, you know, that's dicey. I don't know if that's going to apply to everybody. I know that there are certain players, and I haven't checked contracts for the Eagles to see who it applies to, but there are certain players that have money workout bonuses or roster bonuses for showing up for these workouts. And so those who do will probably show up because they want to get their money. And the union has said, you know, hey, by all means, you know, we're not doing this to cost anybody any money. So if you have a bonus, go show up. But there's solidarity around the league that it's voluntary, and not everybody believes everything so far. All of the precautions are safe. And I think it does hurt the Eagles. They have a new coaching staff. They have a lot of first-year or second-year players, you know, who played last year, whether it's Jalen Reagor, Jalen Hurts especially, who's now going to be most likely the starting quarterback. So,
and he's been
for
working.
Them not to have that time it's tough.
It is, but he has, to his credit, been working out with some of Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, a couple of other people that he has been working out on his own time. Correct?
Yeah, and they've been doing that for several weeks now down in the Dallas area at the Exos facility. I know Quez Watkins has been there. I know John Hightower's been there. The running back, Huntley, that they claimed off waivers last year, has been working out with them. I know Fulgam, as we reported a while back, had a procedure done on his ankle, so I don't know that he's been ready yet to work out with them. But there have been some other guys from the team there working. But, you know, I imagine that they know what the playbook is, or if they've had a chance to glance it and work on some things. But it's still not the same as everybody being at the NovaCare and getting that actual work in. But it's good that they are doing it.
Yeah, it was there was something over the weekend. I think Jeremy Fowler at ESPN said that Hurts is giving off QB1 vibes. In other words, he's running the offseason. And part of his reporting on that was that he is diving into Nick Sirianni's playbook and getting the terminology and then passing that along to all of these people who are with him. So, I mean, for anything, I guess Hurts is at least grabbing this opportunity by the horns and saying, hey, I'm the starter. I'm just going to do all the starter things.
Yeah, he's doing all the right things. And one thing that we learned last week from Jason Avant, actually, on the Q&A show, was that he looked into it and found out that Nick Sirianni is going to do something different than most Eagles coaches in the past with his receivers. He's going to allow his receivers to make in-game sight adjustments, you know, like breaking off certain routes and running different routes based on what they see out of the defense and the technique being played. And in order for receivers to be able to do that successfully, the quarterback really has to be locked in on those adjustments and then be able to deliver the pass timely in accurate manner. I mean, you got to be accurate and timely in general, but this is different because you have to also be alert for when the receivers are going to change their routes on certain plays. So that's going to put a lot of emphasis on comfort with Jalen Hurts and his wide receiver. So it is a good thing that they are putting as much work in right now as they are.
All right, Moshe, I want to get your thoughts on Kerryon Johnson. You know, it's a guy who was a second-round pick not too long ago, was a pretty productive rookie, and then the last 2 years he's had some injury issues. Last year he was almost phased out of the offense. So what was the message to you on signing him, number one? And number two, is he a guy that, okay, they signed him, he's making the team, is he battling with somebody? Who would that guy be? Where do you see him and how that signing kind of factors in?
Yeah, it's good value because they claimed him off waivers, so they didn't have to give him a signing bonus. They didn't have to do what you normally do when you sign a free agent. You just inherit the rookie contract that he was on with most of the money guaranteed being up. Well, all of it that's guaranteed drains to the Lions. So they're just paying his base salary, which I think is under $1 million. So it makes a lot of sense. He does a lot of things well that Jordan Howard does well. He's a good pass protector. He's a big running back. He's also, like Jordan Howard, though, had to battle a lot of injuries, both in the NFL level, but even back to college. Kerryon Johnson had some significant injury history there. So which, when looking into it, made me surprised that the Lions took him in the second round. But nonetheless,
kind of shows you how talented he is, though, to be a running back taken that high. Kind of told me, like, hey, they really felt, you don't see running backs go in the first round, but hey, at 43, We're going to get one. Says that they really thought this was a talented guy.
Yeah, that they thought that, or it could be a classic case of the Lions being the Lions, right? No, but we saw that as a rookie. If you remember that Sunday night game against the Patriots, he had 16 carries for 110 yards, and wound up breaking that Lions drought. I forget how. I think it was 80 games that they had gone without a 100-yard rusher.
Yeah, it was like since Barry Sanders.
Yeah, it felt like that,
right?
Yeah. I think it was Javid Best, actually, but Barry Sanders would have been a really long time. but nonetheless, it was a really long time. And he clearly, like you said, he can play. His issue is staying healthy. He missed about 12 to 14 games over his first 2 years with injuries. And then, of course, the Lions drafted DeAndre Swift, and they signed Jamal Williams. So what you have here is a pretty talented player who can do some good things in your offense, but too risky financially to do anything other than just take the contract that he already has. And in my mind, he competes with Jordan Howard because they're both veterans, both they're both going to cost you more than a rookie right now, but still not a lot. And they both kind of do the same thing, and they can take the ball 15, 16 times if needed in a given game if your number one guy, Miles Sanders, gets hurt. But I don't see, in my mind, Mike, an opportunity. I feel like this is the competition to make it as the backup number one. Jordan Howard versus Kerryon Johnson. I don't see both of those guys being on the team because why would you pay the salaries for both of those guys when one of them is only going to maybe see the field a couple of times?
Right, and then you have – so do you see those two and then Gainwell against Scott? Like, is there any scenario where Gainwell and Scott both are on the team?
Well, I think – maybe, but doubtfully. I think Gainwell is definitely going to be on the team. He's a fifth-round pick. He's got a lot of potential. He does a lot of good things well. And if he has a good training camp, I'm sure that they're going to try to incorporate him into the offense as quickly as they can. Not as a gadget player, but as a player who can line up in a lot of different areas and make an impact as a runner, as a receiver from the slot, maybe even the pony package. So they will try to get him on. So it'll all come down to how many running backs they want to keep and who's going to play special teams. But if you're asking me today in May, what I think the totem pole would look like, I'd probably say obviously Miles Sanders number one, and then choose whoever does better between Jordan Howard and Kerryon Johnson as number two, Kenneth Gainwell 3, and then we'll see if they keep a fourth running back.
All right, Geoff Mosher, obviously the news on Friday was Carrion Johnson. They brought him in, and veteran running back who was drafted in 2018 in round number 2, 43rd overall pick. And that should be an interesting, because Gainwell's a rookie, so he will be at the rookie mini camps coming up.
He should be, yeah.
All right, so that's, and there, as you mentioned, there's a lot of buzz about him. I mean, Kuiper said he was the biggest steal in the draft, and there was ESPN.com did that where they talked to different college coaches, and, they spoke very glowingly and really said that of all these Memphis backs that have come out recently, Henderson and Gibson are the other two. One plays for the Rams, the other for Washington. They all felt that Gainwell is the most talented of that group of Memphis guys. So I would anticipate the Eagles are expecting some decent contribution from him.
Yeah, it may take a little bit because he didn't play football last year, and he's only really played at Memphis 1 year. I think when people make that comparison with the other Memphis backs, they talk about, the explosion with the burst that he has, the ability to do multiple things. I tend to think that Antonio Gibson's going to be a pretty good player because for a guy who was mostly a wide receiver in college, he did a pretty good job as a running back for Washington last year, and he's got more weight on. He's not Gainwell is tiny, but he's still strong and he can still play. So he's going to have a good camp. He's going to have to prove that he deserves some time. If he gets it, that'll be good. If he's ahead of the curve, that's good, and then you can incorporate him into the offense. But I think you look with this guy and you wonder about 2 or 3 years down the road what he can really be.
Yeah, all right. So we're looking forward to see how they incorporate him. I think that's kind of an interesting thing. Does this change anything for Miles Sanders at all?
I don't think so. I mean, I still think Miles Sanders needs to have, I don't want to call it a bounce back year, but he's got to improve in the areas that typically running backs like him struggle in, and that's pass protection. And it's not just the ability to block, but understanding where the blitz comes from when you scan the field, and you have to decide, if for a team like the Ravens you're playing, they can blitz from any different direction with multiple defenders, and you've got to make sure you've got the right guy. He's got to improve in that area. It's not that wasn't his strength. And then I think you want to see him be a little bit more consistent, although it's hard last year. The offense was so terrible all around that I personally feel he became a victim of circumstance. But he did drop some passes that were put there.
That's what I was wondering is, did the new staff come in and say, man, this guy's hands aren't where we need them to be for our offense, which to my recognition is a very running back, catch the ball out of the backfield friendly type of offense. Do they not feel that Sanders is the right guy for that role, but obviously want to use him in many other ways?
Well, I mean, if they watched his rookie year tape in 2019, I mean, you would think that they'd be very impressed with his hands. For a guy who didn't catch the ball much at Penn State, if you remember 2 years ago, he was running those H-seam routes where you line up in the backfield, but you wind up running up the hash marks 20, 30 yards downfield. He made about 3 or 4 catches against the Lions, against the Vikings that year that, we hadn't seen at Penn State, and had to be a pleasant surprise for Doug Peterson and his coaching staff. Last year he dropped some balls, and I don't know if that's just because he was out of rhythm with Carson Wentz. There were times last year, if you remember the Bengals game, he split wide against their rookie linebacker, Akeem Davis-Gaither, and he beat him so badly with a double move that he was wide open along the sideline, and Carson threw the ball about 10 yards out of bounds. It was one of those perplexing Carson throws. So he clearly, when I say he, Miles Sanders, has the ability to line up and beat defenders, linebackers, safeties in the passing game. And if the quarterback can kind of put it in his hands and he doesn't have to reach and do things that receivers tend to do, he probably can get some really good explosion out of him. But I think he does have to improve on his hands and know that not every pass is going to be right in your breadbasket.
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds. It's Football at 4. Check out the latest Inside the Birds podcast. It dropped this morning at 6 a.m. A new one will come out on Thursday morning at 6 as well. And all the stuff on the Inside the Birds platform, getting you ready for Eagles camp and the 2021 season. Let me get your take on, I've heard so much about Trayvon Grimes, the new undrafted rookie wide receiver. And if you watch any Florida, you only heard about Pitts and Kadarius Toney. But Grimes was the guy that maybe had the highest profile entering college and is a very interesting prospect, big-bodied guy. But certainly, I don't know that very many people out there would have heard of him with Pitts and Toney on that roster ahead of them. Not ahead of them, but just more productive than him.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I feel like he's the guy because he went to Florida and because he's 6'4", 220, that fans have kind of, already kind of clung to and said this guy's going to make the team watch because they need a big physical receiver.
Right, he's going to knock out J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
Yeah, I mean, there's also Travis Fulgam. I mean, there's Hightower, there's Watkins. They have other wide receivers as well. And I don't know that they sit there and say we must have a 6'4", 220-pound receiver. If he can't play, he can't play. And he didn't go get drafted. He is big. That is his advantage. I'm told that he does not play to the time that he ran. So we hear about this a lot in the scouting community where you can run a straight line 40 and, run a 4.4. But when you're on tape and you see guys trying to, have hip flexion and the ability to come in and out of cuts and breaks, that it's just not there. Brian Dawkins used to say, everybody looks good in shorts and shells, in OTAs, but what happens when they put the pads on? And so this guy definitely, his tape doesn't show you that he plays to the speed that he ran. He had an average Senior Bowl, I was told. He has not shown an ability to stand out on special teams. And that's big if you're trying to make the team as a receiver on the 53 as an undrafted rookie. So while everybody's seemingly like, oh, yay, we got Trayvon Grimes, I would pump the brakes. You hope he does well. You hope he makes the practice squad. I mean, you hope he makes the 53 because he's that good, but practice squad seems maybe a little bit more realistic. But even to do that, he's going to have to show up and really work his ass off.
Yeah, kind of like, hey, you're battling with Travis Fulgham, who was a 6th-round pick and a big-body guy. That could be, something to watch. I think the wide receivers, we'll talk more about some of the depth chart stuff, but when we get into that wide receiver battle, if you will, should be kind of interesting. I want to get your take. You guys did a really good ITB TV with Mark Schlereth when it came to talking about Landon Dickerson and all the injuries. Who knows more about dealing and playing with injuries as an offensive lineman than Mark Schlereth? So give me a couple of cliff notes on what stood out to kind of calm the people, because everybody's talking about Dickerson and these injuries and, oh, man, how did you take this guy with 2 ACLs and then the tightrope surgery? So what was the message from a Super Bowl champion who dealt with injuries virtually his entire career?
Yeah, so Mark was saying that he tells people, he gives the same kind of advice to people, and he probably would say the same to Landon Dickerson as he did to former Colorado Rockies outfielder Darren Bragg, who got to know each other. I think his son, Mark Schlereth's son, played in the Rockies team. So Bragg was coming off ACL injury and was asking for advice, and he said something to the effect of, look, you're trying to be 100%. If you're trying to be 100% from what you were before, you're going to 100% yourself out of the league mentally. He basically said you have to kind of reset what your concept of 100% is. And then once you do that and come to grips with it, it's okay, especially for an offensive lineman, because you can have great technique, play with great leverage, play with great power, which Landon Dickerson still does, and maul people, and you will be able to survive and flourish in the league like he did, as long as you don't try to be what you were prior to your surgeries or have that expectation and let that weigh on you mentally. And so Landon Dickerson, if he was a wide receiver and he had 4 surgeries, then maybe you're talking different, because your 100% is a whole lot different after 4 surgeries than it is prior to, and especially compared to a lineman. But if you're an offensive lineman and you have great technique, you play with great leverage, you play with great power and strength, which Dickerson does, then the injuries shouldn't be as catastrophic. They wouldn't end your career. You can still have a career like he did, which was 12 NFL seasons, 2 Pro Bowls, and 3 Super Bowl championships.
That was a really good interview for the people out there. Check it out at the Inside the Birds YouTube channel, ITB TV, with Mark Schlereth, who broke that down. All right, Moshe, I want to get into some of the NFL topics out there and get your opinion on. All right, where does this Aaron Rodgers standoff go from here?
I think the thing we all wonder is Aaron Rodgers serious enough about retiring? Because that's really his only leverage, right? Not showing up. You're going to accumulate a ton of fines, and then holding out, you're going to continue. But if you just retire, you sort of force the Packers' hand in this situation and make them kind of have to deal with you. Or maybe the thing I don't know is firing the GM going to do it? It sounds like it's not even all about that. So this to me is an impeccable type of standoff. I don't know how it's going to end.
I don't think anybody does.
I do get the sense Rodgers is just about as stubborn enough to do anything he wants to do to get what he wants.
You know what though? If I'm the Packers, Moshe, I make him retire. If we don't have him, no one else is getting him either. I'm not going to trade him so that somebody else can have Aaron Rodgers on the team. Now you might say, well, then you end up with nothing. All right, well, so be it.
So right, if you retire and you pay back your bonus, does that then make you a free agent, or does the team still retain your rights because you're under contract?
Yeah. Didn't Carson Palmer do something like this where he retired and then he got out of it and he went to the Raiders?
Yeah, because they finally agreed on a compensation because the Bengals realized, well, I'd rather get something for him than nothing. I guess Aaron's is somewhat position of leverage because I think there's only 1 year left on the deal. So if he retires for 1 year, I have no doubt in my mind that even if he came back in 2022, he'd have plenty of teams that were willing to give him a shot. So and pay him very well. So maybe he's willing to take a year off just to get at the Packers and have his way. I have no idea.
Tough at this, especially it's not like he's 34, 35. I mean, he's at the back end here. Not that I'm saying that he can't play, but to shave a whole year off at this stage, you might just say, you know what? I don't feel like taking those hits anymore. This was great. I'm hosting Jeopardy and I'm married, and this is my new life.
Maybe he would. Maybe he'd retire with the idea that he'd be back next year, and then all of a sudden realize it's a pretty good life he's got there. I hope not. I'd love to see him continue to play, and I think that Tom Brady showed last year that if you take care of yourself correctly, you are one of the all-time greats, which Aaron definitely is, that you can still play as long as you keep yourself, mentally and physically ready to do it.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, and of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. By the way, Eric Fisher, the new left tackle with the Colts to protect Carson Wentz out there. So we finally have the answer to who their left tackle looks like it'll be.
Yeah, now he's coming off the ACL injury, right? So they have to be pretty confident that he's going to be ready to go, sooner than later. I don't know by week 1, but, hopefully for them, sometime in September.
Right.
And he's the player that they expect him to be.
Yeah, he got hurt. Man, he got hurt sometime later on in the season because you remember he got hurt.
He
tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He tore his Achilles. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought it was ACL. You're right. It is Achilles. And, listen, not everybody is Brandon Brooks, but maybe this kid is. And
see, all right. I'm glad you brought Brandon Brooks up. I said this on Friday's show. I have, and maybe I'm an outlier here, I have a 0% worry about Brandon Brooks. I know, and you're the one guy who keeps surprising me and worrying me that, they could get rid of him or they could trade him or, if I'm the Eagles and I have Brandon Brooks, I got the best player in the league at that position. I have 0% concern about him getting injured. These two things that have happened to him have been, he had the one in the playoff game or right before the playoff game the one year, and then he did the other one working out. But I don't feel that Brandon Brooks is like an injury-prone guy. I mean, he came back from the one Achilles and was fine. He didn't tear this Achilles because of the other one, right?
Yeah, no, not that I know of. I mean, scientifically, I have no idea, but they do seem to be separate. I just think it's I think it's a culmination of 2 Achilles injuries. You're going to be 34 doing this or 33.
No,
he's not young.
Younger than that.
He's younger than that?
Yeah, he's like 30.
I know he's over 30.
I think he's right around 30, 31.
Okay.
I'll find this for you really fast.
Okay, 2 Achilles injuries, over the age of 30, and huge contract. And you've got
he's 31.
He's drafted 31. Okay, when does he turn 32?
I will get that.
Is it during the season?
August. Yeah, so he'll be 32.
So he'll be 32 before the season.
Yes.
So that means he'll be 33 before next season. So I mean, he's obviously going to be on the team this season, I would think.
Right.
Unless something happens.
I hope. But you're the one guy that keeps making me think
he's not the future anymore, and he makes a lot of money, and you've invested in some offensive line capital for the last 2 years. You have the ability to replace him on the cheap.
Yeah, he is. He's one guy that if I could figure out a way to keep, I'm keeping him around because he's one of those guys that I'm just like, hey, I got the best guy. I mean, I got a top 2 guy, and I hate to say it's like watching a Ben Simmons video, but his videos are. This guy is in incredulous shape. I can't say it's not like difference. He's sloshing around the NovaCare. This guy could take on Brock Lesnar.
Well, the crazy thing is, I look at him and I'm like, he doesn't look like a guard anymore. He's so chiseled and an Adonis, and I'm like, is he a tight end now?
play him at tackle.
I know, or a tight end even. Right. I mean, he's even thinned down and trimmed down.
He can go bounce out to the left tackle battle and with Dillard and Mailata, play him over there.
Sure.
Right.
Listen, there's going to be at some point in time where we're going to have a discussion, I'm sure, maybe training camp, maybe season, who knows, where Landon Dickerson may have to go in for some reason to play left guard, right? And Jordan Mailata is going to be there at left tackle.
Wow.
And it's going to be like, oh, my God, you have a 350-pound guy and a 335-pound guy.
And what's
right
interesting
there.
is I looked at this the other day. The Eagles have 3 quarterbacks on the roster. Hurts is 6'1", Newman's 6'4", and Flacco's 6'6". So you got a 6'1" guy playing behind these 6'8" linemen. That's something to consider. All right, Geoff Mosher,
Definitely.
The Inside the Birds podcast. The guys do great work, and if you missed the conversation on ITB TV with Mark Schlereth, check that out, and everything on the Inside the Birds platform over on the YouTube channel. All right, Moshe, thanks, bud.
All right, my friend. Have a good one.
All right, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, we got plenty more to go here on this Monday edition of the Sports Bash. And when we come back, do you remember? I got some things that happened that you might be like, oh my gosh. We'll bring back Do You Remember, something we used to do and have some fun with. The offseason, summertime, we'll have a little fun with that. That's coming up. Bob Wankel will talk some Phillies with us coming up at about 4:40 today. Phil's had a tough night, tough weekend. Saturday night was brutal. I couldn't stay up anymore. I had enough. I turned it off. Told you that earlier. I said I'm done. And Jeff Kerr tonight talked a little NFL. We'll get his take on the Aaron Rodgers. I want to get Jeff Kerr's take, too, on the direction that the NFL is going in terms of watching the game. Thursday Night Football this year, you're going to need Amazon Prime. You cannot watch that game on regular television. I want to get into with that. All right. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. This hour brought to you by my boys over at Prop Swap, where America buys and sells sports bets. Take your profit. Find out how. PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today.